In every civilization, no matter how divine the king or how free the people claimed to be, someone was always watching. Power, by its nature, demands information about enemies, about allies, and most dangerously, about its own subjects. The story of surveillance is not a modern invention. It is one of the oldest reflexes of organized society: to know, to record, and to control. From desert empires to glowing smartphones, the Watchers have always been with us. This is the rise of the surveillance state. From Pharaoh's spies to Google, welcome to Uncover Time, where we travel through hidden corridors of history, unveiling the secrets that shaped our world. Today, we step into a story both ancient and urgent: the rise of the surveillance state. From whispers in temple courts to code written in the clouds, in ancient Egypt, beneath the golden gaze of the sun god Ra, pharaohs ruled as living deities. But even gods needed informants. Hieroglyphs carved into limestone speak of Medjay patrols. Desert scouts turned into domestic watchdogs, tasked with guarding tombs, watching laborers, and reporting unrest. Temple scribes, draped in linen and silence, kept records not just of grain and cattle, but of rumors and rivalries. Papyrus scrolls from the Middle Kingdom reveal more than trade logs. They include complaints from workers, investigations into theft, and instructions to observe the demeanor of the overseer's servants. The state's eyes were not only open, they were trained on both the pyramids and the people who built them. In the city of Thebes, tax collectors were accompanied by listeners, men instructed to overhear disputes and note those who questioned the pharaoh's divine justice. And while priests offered prayers, they also offered reports. The boundary between the sacred and the state was always thin. Travel eastward to China, and you'll find another ancient empire guided by another principle: harmony through order, and order through watching. As early as the Zhou dynasty, lords kept networks of retainers who reported everything from crop yields to whispered dissatisfaction. But it was under the Qin, in the 3rd century BCE, that surveillance became law. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, builder of the Great Wall and burner of books, believed that the strength of the empire depended on a vigilant state. His legalist advisors devised a system where even a failure to report a crime was a crime. Entire families could be punished for the misdeeds of one. And so people turned on each other preemptively. Spying became civic duty. Records tell of ears in the market, state agents posing as fishmongers, scribes, travelers. A father who joked about the emperor's decrees in his home might be denounced by his own son. And statues of dragons and tigers, symbols of strength, were carved over doorways, not just to inspire fear of heaven, but fear of the watchers behind the walls. In the Indian subcontinent, centuries before Christ, the Mauryan Empire was guided by a chilling manual of statecraft, the Arthashastra, attributed to Chanakya. It offered more than political theory. It was a handbook of surveillance. The king shall station secret agents, it says, in houses of public women, temples, and groves. No corner of society was beyond the reach of his invisible hand. Agents were trained to disguise themselves as monks, merchants, laborers, even lovers. Their job: report on the morals, moods, and movements of subjects and ministers alike. One passage recommends using children as spies to test the character of their teachers. A man's true nature, it warns, is known only when he believes he is not observed. In public, this system was cloaked in the language of order and divine duty. But behind the gold-trimmed thrones and incense-filled halls, it was fear. silent and systematic, that ensured the empire held together. Spying was not an aberration. It was policy. It was permanence. The Roman Empire, though draped in togas and marble, was not blind to the necessity of watching its own. As roads stretched from Britannia to Syria, and soldiers stamped imperial order into distant lands, Rome also expanded a quieter force. The frumentary, ostensibly grain agents and couriers, they served another purpose: to be the emperor's eyes in the shadows. Operating across the empire, they reported insurrections, intercepted letters, and investigated treasonous whispers. No governor, senator, or general was beyond their reach. Even those who bowed before Caesar knew that loyalty alone wasn't enough. One had to appear loyal under the scrutiny of invisible observers. Historians note that these agents traveled as merchants or messengers, slipping through ports, temples, and taverns. Their reports, written in tight Latin script, formed a hidden history of the empire, one not carved in stone, but carried in sealed scrolls to the Palatine Hill. In time, their reach extended so far that even emperors began to fear their own spies. And in the East, the early Islamic caliphates developed their own form of institutional oversight. The bird, an imperial postal system under the Umayyads and Abbasids, served a dual purpose: to carry news and to create it. Station masters along the routes were not just messengers, but informants, expected to report the behavior of governors, soldiers, and city leaders. The caliph in Baghdad might sit in splendor, draped in silk, sipping rosewater. But thanks to the bird, he would know if a provincial judge delayed justice, or if a market inspector accepted a bribe. The path of information ran faster than rebellion, and that kept the realm in line. In mosques and markets, another figure watched over public life, the mutasib, originally a moral overseer. He soon took on the role of a local enforcer, checking weights and measures, but also noting blasphemous talk or strange gatherings. Surveillance, in this world, was tied to piety. To spy was to protect God's law. In medieval Christian Europe, the rise of surveillance wore a darker robe. The Inquisition, a mechanism of the Church, was not satisfied with outward behavior. It sought control over belief. What you confessed, what you questioned, even what you dreamed, all could become evidence against you. Accusations came from neighbors, rivals, or anonymous letters slipped into iron boxes outside the cathedral. The accused might never face their accuser. "The devil is cunning," one inquisitor wrote, "but not as cunning as a righteous man with God's permission to observe." To be watched was to be judged. To be judged was to be punished. Torture chambers, once rare, became tools of interrogation, not just of bodies, but of souls. And through this system, the Church built a psychological regime where surveillance outlived the jailer. People began to police themselves, fearing not just punishment, but damnation. Across the Mongol steppes, meanwhile, a different kind of surveillance was spreading. Genghis Khan, the Thunder of the East, conquered more land than any man before or after him, not only through horses and arrows, but through intelligence. Scouts moved ahead of his armies, measuring rivers, counting livestock, and learning the grievances of villagers. Victory began not with war, but with knowledge. The Mongols developed a postal intelligence system called the Yam, a web of relay stations stretching from the Pacific to the Danube. Couriers galloped across these stations with information wrapped in silk scrolls, while local chieftains were compelled to report harvests, moods, and murmurs of discontent. It wasn't just the sword that conquered. it was the knowledge of when to swing it. In the Ottoman Empire, sultans ruled over a patchwork of peoples and religions: Turks, Arabs, Greeks, Armenians, Jews, and Slavs. And the key to holding it together was listening. The Hafiye, or secret police, were tasked with monitoring not just political threats, but poets, scholars, and imams whose verses might stir sedition. Reports poured into Istanbul from bazaars, baths, and backstreets. A verse whispered in a coffee house, a sermon that lingered too long on justice. These could trigger investigations. The Ottoman archives contain thousands of such documents, tiny windows into the empire's vast network of ears and eyes. Even in cultural flourishing, surveillance was never far. In 17th century Isfahan, Safavid Persia dazzled visitors with its gardens, tilework, and philosophy. Yet behind the domes and minarets, the Shah's administrators kept detailed records of noble lineages, merchant inventories, and foreign guests. The state believed that beauty must be guarded and order must be watched. Meanwhile, in Mughal India, where peacocks walked marble courtyards and poets read verses under moonlight, the emperors ruled with equal parts elegance and vigilance. Agents known as Wakianavis, literally story writers, submitted daily reports to the imperial court. These reports chronicled everything: the price of pepper, the number of camels entering the city, which noble had a new mistress, or what the Maulvi had said in Friday prayers. In the Mughal imagination, the emperor was the center of the world, and the world, therefore, had to be mapped and monitored daily. The British East India Company would later inherit and expand these practices. But instead of scrolls, they used ledgers and spies trained in multiple languages. Surveillance was not just about control, it was a business model. Knowing when a rival prince was planning rebellion or when a trade route might be disrupted was as valuable as gold. Back in Europe, the 18th century was an age of enlightenment, but also of bureaucracy. As empires grew, so did their need to know. France developed a powerful postal surveillance system known as the Cabinet Noir, the Black Chamber, where letters were secretly opened, copied, resealed, and sent on their way. The addressee never knew. Even writers like Voltaire and Rousseau had their mail opened. They knew it and kept writing. Surveillance in this era became almost theatrical. The state made no secret of watched to be seen. And citizens responded by watching back with satire, pamphlets, and coded language. With the French Revolution came a new kind of surveillance: popular, paranoid, and bloody. In the name of liberty, neighbors denounced neighbors, and the guillotine answered swiftly. The Committee of Public Safety deployed informants across cities and villages. The line between citizen and spy blurred beyond recognition. And then came Napoleon. Order returned, but with it, a surveillance machine sharper than ever before. Joseph, Napoleon's Minister of Police, built a web of spies, censors, and double agents. "I will know what Paris dreams," he once declared. And he did. Or made sure the dreamers disappeared. Fauch's legacy would echo across Europe. From Prussia to Russia, monarchs embraced the idea that knowledge was power, and that the people must not speak too freely. Secret police agencies rose in Vienna, St. Petersburg, and Berlin, tracking pamphlets, sermons, and meetings. The age of modern espionage had begun. In Victorian England, where the railways ran like veins and telegraphs sparked across the empire. The government feared revolution. After witnessing revolts in Europe, Britain expanded its own surveillance quietly. The Home Office compiled reports on radicals, anarchists, and foreign exiles, intelligence was now a tool of preemption. By the late 19th century, the foundations of the surveillance state were in place. Telegraph lines, railroads, censuses, and passports created a grid over society. These tools, meant for connection and order, could just as easily serve control. The modern citizen was becoming visible to everyone but himself. World War I took surveillance global. From trenches to telegrams, empires spied on soldiers and civilians alike. In Britain, MI5 was formed. In the US, the Espionage Act criminalized dissent. Intelligence officers intercepted letters, wiretapped phones, and built secret files. Total war required total information. After the war, governments realized they could not unsee what they had learned. Intelligence agencies became permanent. Surveillance was no longer a wartime exception. It was institutionalized. In the Soviet Union, the Cheka precursor to the KGB monitored not only enemies of the revolution, but its supporters too. Loyalty required constant proof. In fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, surveillance became a national obsession. Mussolini's OVRA and Hitler's Gestapo operated not just with files and phones, but fear. Citizens were encouraged to report one another. Children informed on parents. Teachers informed on students. Surveillance had become cultural. The Nazi regime took data obsession to new extremes. The census, tax forms, religious registries all became tools to identify citizens, Roma, and political opponents. IBM punch card machines, leased to the Reich, helped process millions of records. Technology had become an accomplice in genocide. After the war, the West was shaken by the horrors of totalitarian surveillance. But in the name of democracy, it soon built its own. The Cold War brought paranoia on all sides. The CIA and the NSA were born in America. The Stasi perfected spying in East Germany. The Iron Curtain divided more than nations. It split the idea of privacy. The Stasi of East Germany perfected the art, with one informant for every 6 people. The agency amassed over 100 miles of files, handwritten notes, photographs, sound recordings. They preserved the smell of dissidents in jars, in case dogs were needed for tracking. Surveillance had become not just methodical, but biological. In the US, McCarthyism sparked a frenzy of loyalty oaths and blacklists. Hollywood actors, civil rights activists, and scientists were accused of subversion. Surveillance cameras entered public life, first in banks, then in schools and streets. The watchers became part of the scenery. Then came computers. Bulky, humming, and full of promise, they changed the scale of information. Governments could now store millions of records, birth, employment, medical, criminal, and access them in seconds. The 20th century had discovered the secret dream of all surveillance states: to forget nothing, but even computers couldn't match what came next. The internet, what began as a tool for research and sharing, soon became a highway of human behavior. Every click, every search, every email. Data now moved faster than law. Surveillance no longer needed secret agents. It only needed servers. In 2001, after the September 11th attacks, surveillance crossed a moral line. The Patriot Act in the United States granted broad powers to intelligence agencies. Phones were tapped, metadata collected, and international allies spied upon. Fear overruled restraint. The war on terror became a war on privacy. Edward Snowden's revelations in 2013 changed everything. Or so it seemed. He exposed massive global surveillance programs where companies like Google, Apple, and Facebook were compelled to share user data with government agencies. PRISM, Xcore, and Boundless Informant became household names in the world of leaks. But the world didn't change course. Instead, surveillance became ambient. Smart devices listened for commands, and sometimes for more. Home assistants, smart TVs, and even toys could be hacked or monitored. Surveillance was no longer outside your door. It was inside your bedroom, your pocket, your life. Meanwhile, China unveiled the most sophisticated surveillance state the world had ever seen. With millions of cameras, AI, facial recognition, and a social credit system, it blended old authoritarianism with new tech. Citizens could be rewarded or punished based on behavior. Dissent became not just dangerous, but trackable in real time. Facial recognition became the face of modern control. Airports scanned you, concerts tracked you, stores watched you browse. Your face was your ID, your password, and your prison. What once belonged to mirrors now belonged to machines. But it wasn't just governments. Tech companies became surveillance empires in their own right. Google tracked your location. Facebook tracked your preferences. Amazon tracked your shopping, your voice, even your home temperature. In return, we got convenience and gave up everything else. Data became the world's most valuable resource. Not oil, not gold, but your clicks, your moods, your time. Entire economies were built on attention and prediction. Algorithms knew you better than your friends did, sometimes better than you knew yourself. And then came the pandemic. In a time of fear, governments rolled out contact tracing apps, thermal scanners, quarantine enforcement drones. It was about safety, but the infrastructure remained. When the emergency passed, the surveillance stayed. As surveillance normalized, resistance grew. Whistleblowers, encryption advocates, and digital rights groups pushed back. New apps promised privacy. Laws were debated, but the question remained. In a world built on watching, can anything truly be unseen? In some places, surveillance turned inward. Parents monitored children through apps. Employers tracked workers' screens and bathroom breaks. Relationships cracked under digital suspicion. The line between concern and control blurred into obsession. At the edge of all this lies AI, artificial intelligence, trained not just to store data, but to understand it. It recognizes faces, reads emotions, writes messages, and predicts behavior. In China, AI helps the state rank citizens. In the West, it helps advertisers sell shoes. In both, it knows what you want, sometimes before you do. Children born today will never know a world without cameras. Their first cries are filmed, their steps uploaded, their faces recognized before they can speak. Their memories will be shaped not only by what happened, but by what was recorded. In developing nations, surveillance isn't debated, it's adopted. Facial scans replace ID cards. Drones, watch farmers, AI monitors, classrooms. Cheap tech meets high ambition. Sometimes it brings safety, sometimes silence. Meanwhile, tech billionaires dream of a future where every object is smart, every home connected, and every citizen measurable. They call it the Internet of Things. But behind the buzzwords lies a truth. Everything connected can be watched, and everything watched can be judged. In the name of efficiency, surveillance crept into every public space. Smart streetlights tracked movement. Trash bins counted fingerprints. Traffic cameras scanned faces, not just plates. A city became less a home, more a circuit board, pulsing with data, not just life. For the wealthy, surveillance became a private luxury. Gated communities offered biometric locks, drone patrols, and AI sentries. Privacy wasn't dead. It was expensive. While the poor were scanned, the rich were shielded by the very same tools. The more we watched, the more we judged. Algorithms punished the unemployed. Insurance apps tracked movement. Job seekers were scored by webcam posture. Surveillance stopped being about crime and started being about character. And yet, for all this power, surveillance is fragile. Hackers breach databases, false positives ruin lives. Algorithms misunderstand context. When judgment is automated, justice becomes a bug, and reality a glitch. We built machines to remember everything, but forgot what forgetting meant. In ancient times, a crime could be forgiven, a rumor forgotten. Today, the internet never forgets. Your mistakes live forever, cached and searchable. Redemption, once personal, is now public. Some countries fought back with laws. The EU passed the GDPR, a sweeping regulation demanding consent, transparency, and the right to be forgotten. It was a step toward privacy, but in a world already watched, the walls were hard to rebuild. But laws are slow, and code is fast. While governments debated privacy, new technologies appeared. Neural interfaces, emotion tracking wearables, AI-generated deepfakes. Surveillance wasn't retreating, it was evolving. Some tried to disappear. They left phones at home, paid in cash, wore masks, scrambled their signals. But even then, satellites watched, pattern detection kicked in, and absence itself became suspicious. Activists began to resist creatively. They built anti-surveillance fashion, projected fake faces, disrupted data patterns. Art became protest, and protest became encryption. In the age of visibility, invisibility became an art. Surveillance was once about kings and rebels, then about borders and spies. Today, it's about everyone. The line between watcher and watched has disappeared. We're all in the system, feeding it, fearing it, forgetting we built it. Even dreams aren't private anymore. Brain-computer interfaces now decode imagined images, whispered thoughts, silent intentions. Researchers call it breakthrough. But when thought becomes data, where does the soul go? In totalitarian regimes, surveillance ensures loyalty. But in free societies, it sells convenience. One forces silence, the other invites participation. Both build the same cage, only the lighting is different. Some wonder if it's already too late. Like the myth of the Tower of Babel, we built a network too vast, a language too complex, a system too powerful to control. Surveillance is no longer just a tool. It is the architecture. But history is not prophecy. The same species that built pyramids, empires, and prisons also wrote constitutions, sparked revolutions, and tore down walls. Surveillance is not destiny. It's a decision made daily, collectively, quietly. We live in the age of the invisible eye, where shadows have code, voices leave trails, and even silence speaks. But history has taught us this. Power watched others. Now it watches us. The question is, will we ever watch it back? The future will not ask for your privacy. It will assume it. Smart cities, connected cars, wearable tech, biometric IDs, all are built with default surveillance. The opt-out button, if it exists, grows smaller every year. For the young, surveillance is not fear, it's furniture. They grow up surrounded by devices that talk, cameras that wave, and apps that monitor sleep. It's not sinister. It's simply normal. Artists and writers imagined this world long ago. Orwell warned us in 1984. Bradbury saw it in Fahrenheit 451, but they missed one thing. We wouldn't be forced into surveillance. We would ask for it. Surveillance didn't spread through chains. It spread through comfort. We wanted speed, safety, customization, memory. We gave up privacy not because we were oppressed, but because we were tired. Still, the story isn't finished. Every generation redraws the line between safety and freedom. What we accept today, our children may reject. What terrifies us, they may defend. The surveillance state is not fixed. It evolves with us. Tech giants once promised to connect us. They did, but also to cameras, trackers, and algorithms. The price of connection was surveillance, and by the time we noticed, we were addicted to both. We used to share stories by firelight. Now we share everything. Instantly, constantly, publicly. Our desires, mistakes, movements, even grief. In the surveillance state, we don't just get watched, we help build the feed. Some say the next frontier is inside us. Biometric passports, emotion recognition, genetic profiling. Surveillance is becoming biological. Not just what we do, but what we are. Resistance isn't only about protest, it's also about refusal. Refusal to overshare, to auto-update, to always be connected. In a world addicted to watching, choosing stillness is revolutionary. And still, surveillance grows. Quieter, smaller, smarter. It vanishes into lenses, wires, dust. What once loomed large now hides, not behind walls, but inside habits. You don't see it, you do it. The battle over surveillance won't be waged in silence. It will happen in legislation, education, encryption, and imagination. Every password we change, every system we question, is a vote for the future. From Babylon's spies to Caesar's scribes, from the Inquisition to the NSA. Surveillance has always been about power. Who holds it and who can see without being seen. But today's power doesn't wear robes or armor. It wears terms of service, social ratings, and predictive analytics. The sword has become an algorithm, and the battlefield, your behavior. Hope lies in knowledge, not just in understanding the systems, but remembering they were made by us and can be unmade. Surveillance is powerful, yes, but so is human will. So next time you click accept all, pause. Next time you post, ask why. Next time you speak near a screen, listen to the silence after. In a world full of watchers, awareness is the first act of freedom. The surveillance state isn't just built by governments or corporations, it's built by habits. Every time we trade privacy for ease, every time we ignore the terms, the state grows quietly stronger. And yet silence is not surrender. Even in monitored worlds, people resist. By whispering, by coding, by choosing paper over pixels. The human spirit finds ways to disappear. History teaches us that no empire of control lasts forever. Walls crumble, systems collapse, and the people, when ready, reclaim their space. Even digital kingdoms can fall. If we must live in the eye, then let it see truth. Let it reflect justice, not control. Let transparency flow both ways, not just from us to them, but from them to us. Because this isn't a story of endings, it's a story of thresholds. Surveillance may define this era, but what defines the next is still unwritten. That pen, as always, is in our hands. We stand at the crossroads of control and conscience. Technology offers tools, not truths, and every tool asks a question. Will you use this to free or to follow? When privacy becomes rebellion, then every locked door is a protest, every unread message a stand. In the age of constant watching, silence becomes its own language. Surveillance is not just about watching people, it's about shaping them. Behavior predicted is behavior steered. The more we're watched, the more we become what's expected. But human minds are not code. We change, we surprise, we rebel. And no algorithm, no matter how advanced, can fully contain the soul of a thinking, feeling being. Maybe the future isn't a prison of glass, but a garden of mirrors, each reflecting a choice, a fear, a hope. The more aware we become, the more power we hold over what gets seen and what stays sacred. So, let us not fear the eye, but teach it. Let us shape the tools before they shape us. Let our awareness be sharper than their code, and our stories deeper than their scripts. We are not just data. We are memory. We are mystery. We are the quiet thoughts no algorithm can predict. The last spaces of freedom in a world lit too brightly. Thank you for watching Uncover Time, where the past reminds us that the future is a choice, and the most powerful tools ever created are still in our hands. From papyrus scrolls to digital profiles, from hidden scribes to predictive AI, surveillance has never just been about safety. It has always been about power. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe history should not only be remembered, but deeply understood. Because in a world of watchers, awareness is the first act of freedom.